Howdy, Hacksters! Welcome to Friday. It has been quite a week, and I have been working on, ironically, a productivity hack using the Arduboy. So I've been going back and forth about which platform to use, and at first I was going to use the M5 Stick C, which is a really cool platform that involves programming ESP32, and it has a little OLED screen and a couple of user programmable buttons and things like that. But I ended up settling on the Arduboy because I think that for productivity hacks, it really helps to use something that's actually fun and you like interacting with. Not that the M560 is not fun or fun to interact with, but this is it's just a joy. It's this tiny little electronic friendly device. Like there's no way to feel like this is a tyrannical device ruling over your life. Anyway, those two are great for this particular project because I want to build a device where I can set a bunch of different timers for things. Things that I call mind-altering gadgets. They're basically ways of helping yourself set your mindset just with electronics. So for example, let's look at what we actually mean. Oh yeah, well there's some cool stuff about Arduboy as well. But so you might have heard of the Pomodoro Technique. This is a way of sort of setting yourself up for success by saying, okay, I'm going to work for 25 minutes, and then for 5 minutes, I'm going to rest, and I'm not going to do that more than 4 times in a row without taking a longer break. This is originally, it's called the Pomodoro Technique because that's Italian for tomato, and it was originally done with this little tomato timer. It's really cute, kind of fun, and it's basically a way of telling your brain, okay, all we have to do is 25 minutes of something. We don't even have to finish anything. We just have to like sit down and do it for 25 minutes. And then we take a break. And you have to actually adhere to the breaks as well in order to like make sure that you're telling yourself the truth, you know, and you actually know that you're really only going to do 25 minutes of it. And it really helps some people focus. So I like playing around with this, but I rarely actually use it because you have to set it on your phone or whatever. There are apps for it, but they're not very fun. So what I've done first is I've created this Pomodoro timer on here. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, though. I want to do a bunch of different timer hacks on this, including others. Let me tell you about them. There's this unit of time that became really popular in my old hackerspace, All Hands Active in Ann Arbor. It's called the K, and it is equivalent to 1/100th of a day, which is about 14.4 minutes. It's almost exactly 1/4 of an hour, which is a really handy unit of time, it turns out, for things like saying, oh, I'll be over in 1 or 2 K. Like, oh yeah, 15 to 30 minutes. That's really easy. Or for example, one thing that I like to do is check in with myself and do mindfulness practice. And it's really hard to remember to actually do that. And in order to help it become a habit, I have occasionally made these different devices, such as the Hypnos pendant, which vibrates every K in order to remind me to sort of check in with myself, whether that be like posture, if I'm trying to do a habit or cancel out a habit or something like that, I can check in on that. You can find the code on GitHub, I guess. And the enclosure is no longer working. I'll update that. So this is a version that I made with the light blue bean, rest in peace. It was a wonderful piece of technology. I also made a version of this using the Tiny Circuits Tiny Screen. It would actually display to you how many K it was in the day, so it's a sort of clock. And so this one is really just going to be this thing doesn't have internet connection, so it can't check in with an NTP server to get the actual time of day. And I'm definitely not going to wake up at midnight to reset it. But it doesn't have to be that accurate. So I'm happy with it being a relative time based on whenever you turn on the device. And then it'll activate the K timer, and you'll be like, okay, in 15 or 14.4 minutes, it's going to give me a buzz. A nice thing about the Arduboy and the M5 Stick C, actually, is that they have built-in lithium polymer batteries that include a charging circuit. I looked at a bunch of different Adafruit technology for this, but they really often do not include a charging circuit, even if they have a JST connector for a battery. And for me, I find that really frustrating and kind of It seems like it would add so much functionality to these boards. So I'm not quite sure, like, if it's a size thing, it would easily be worth it to me to have that extra size dedicated to a battery charging circuit. But anyway, this one has one, and the M56C has one, and so it's perfect for that. There's another type of decimal time that was, briefly raised by the Swatch watch company called Swatch Internet Time, in which I think it was 100th of a day. It was called a beat. Wait, what was an actual beat? Wow, it was in 1999. Oh, they launched their own satellite about it. They were criticized for planning to use a ham radio frequency for broadcasting a commercial message. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so anyway, instead of hours and minutes, the mean solar day is divided into 1,000 parts called beats. So that would be a tenth of a K. Okay, which is 1 minute and 26.4 seconds. I don't think this is nearly as handy as the thing. And the way that they had you telling time was just by the number of beats. So at 248 would indicate a time 248 beats after midnight, representing 248 1,000ths of a day, just over 5 hours and 57 minutes. I think that's a little bit unwieldy, but I like the K system a lot for like relative timing, Prelude Delight says, that's why I got one of the M5 Atoms, not quite as functional as the Arduboy, but the RGB matrix is super fun. That sounds rad. Yeah, cool. So same thing with the microbit as with the Adafruit boards that I mentioned, is that the microbit runs off of it won't take 4.2 volts, which LiPo batteries can go up to. I think its max is like 3.5, something like that. Anyway, you can't use LiPos with it, the regular ones that are 3.7 volts. And I find that really obnoxious. It also doesn't have a charging circuit. So you have to like put in a battery container and use, even if you use like rechargeable double or triple A's, you still end up having to take them out and recharge them. And that's no fun. So those reasons choosing these platforms. M5 I haven't quite got this working yet, but the Arduboy is more fun anyway. Here's another mind-altering gadget that I've made in the past. This is based on the idea of hypnagogic thought, which is it's not even an idea, it's a scientific phenomenon where as soon as you're waking up from sleep, you're in this sort of liminal state between waking and sleep, and it's a really sort of freeform, creative, associative mindset. And so you're able to do this as well if you're sort of falling asleep or zoning out or whatever, or going for a nap, and you set a timer for 8 to 10 minutes or whatever, or you could even have a sensor that detects when you're falling asleep and then gives you a little nudge. In this case, with the creativity button, it was a vibration, haptic vibration feedback. On the Arduboy so far, it would be a beep, probably. And the idea is that, like, back in the day, supposedly Edgar Allan Poe, supposedly Salvador Dali would do things like hold a marble or a spoon in their hand, and when it falls out of their hand, I think if it was a marble, it would like fall into a metal bowl, or a spoon would fall onto the floor when they started to fall asleep, and then it would wake them up again. And then they do that a number of times to like just get a bunch of ideas. And you can do this very easily just with a timer. So again, this was actually another project with the light blue bean, which I love so much. I just tore apart this Amazon internet button and replaced its guts with this light blue bean with a little button on it and a haptic feedback motor inside that would vibrate. So I thought this was great. Unfortunately, the light blue bean no longer exists. But again, that's something that we can put inside of the Arduboy. And what I've been doing for the last few days, on and off, is trying to program in a sort of master sketch in Arduino. What's inside here is an Arduino Leonardo, which, as well as being able to function actually natively as a USB keyboard, mouse, joystick, or MIDI input, fun fact, also, yeah, is Arduino programmable. So I want to make a master sketch with different modes. So basically the default mode is going to be a K timer, so that throughout the day, it'll give me these notifications about decimal time, and about every 15 minutes or so I'll check in on my posture, on my mindfulness, whatever, on my productivity. Like, just look at what you're doing and reorient. Like, am I doing something that I want to be doing right now, or am I futzing around on the internet? Which is all too tempting these days. So the main loop would be a timer, decimal time. And then I would be able to select a different mode, such as Pomodoro mode, when it would mute the timer and instead do this Pomodoro method. And same thing with the Hypnagogic Thought creativity timer. So we'll get into the rest of that. Before I go on, I want to show you a demo of what I'm actually doing, because that's the fun part. Okay, so here we are. Here's the Arduboy. And when you first start it up, it goes, howdy. And then when you push the button, it makes a little beep, which you might not have heard. Now, what I've done here is I've made actually a variable in the sketch. This is a test version where a minute only lasts 1 second, just to test the functionality. And then later on, I'll move that back to being a minute per count. So counting down from 25 minutes. The math on this is actually still a little bit wonky because I haven't sat down and really debugged it. So it gives you another little beep when your 5-minute rest period begins, and then 2 little beeps when it's done, and then it resets itself, and then you can do it again. Hopefully you heard the beep that time. Yeah, and so again, yeah, I'll reprogram that to be a minute per countdown, and so far this is really good. I was having trouble with the clock because it has to do with different types of variables and how you can use them, and somehow I keep getting snarled up in these different entangles. But for now, I've got this Pomodoro one, which is good, and that'll help me through today. So let's see, what else? Oh yeah, more about the Arduboy. So there's some cool stuff coming out with that. As always, you can find all the links that I'm mentioning in the description of this video. So a few days ago, Cameron Coward, one of our bloggers, posted on Hackster.io/news. Ta-da! That's our news site. It's really awesome, and it's easy to get lost in, so be careful. About the upcoming Arduboy FX, which will allow you to store hundreds of games in flash memory. But not only that, you don't have to actually buy a whole new Arduboy. You can get the chip and solder it on. Here's the new one, Arduboy FX. Woohoo, pretty. But look at this. This is the old version with this new flash memory chip soldered on. And it looks like it's on a little flexible PCB that attaches on top. I actually took this thing apart for my own nefarious purposes. And yeah, that's an extra little flex PCB that they've soldered onto those 3 test points on the right side. You can see the orange flexi PCB, the 3 silver test points all the way to the right. And that's where it's sort of soldered on. It's kind of a brilliant way of doing it. Is that actually attached to the piezo as well? No, they slid it in underneath the piezo connections. Ha, cool. So I'm planning on getting that chip so that I can store lots of stuff in here. But honestly, for now, just having this this timer is really good. And oh, did my screen share die? Come back. There we go. All right. Train of thought because we lost the screen share. Okay, so the reason I was taking this apart is because I want to be able to add haptic feedback, like I mentioned with the Hypnos pendant and the creativity button. A lot of these, I don't always want to be beeped at all day long, you know? Maybe I want to just get a little haptic notification and I'll feel it. One nice thing about the M5 Stick C, I will mention, is that it is designed to be wearable. You can get an actual watch strap for it, and this is not. This would actually have to go in my pocket. So beeps are maybe good because I wouldn't actually feel haptic feedback. But with the M5 Stick C, I would. I still think it'd be nice to have a little haptic feedback breakout, but it's not a huge priority. The thing I do want to put on it, however, is a pulse sensor. This is a heartbeat sensor. You can get one at pulsesensor.com and learn all about how to program these with Arduino. And I basically just need to open up the back of this again and solder it on. It does have analog pins broken out. The trouble is that, as you can see, in this these release notes that battery is very thin, and there's not a lot of extra space to put stuff, and I'm afraid that if I solder to the test points underneath the battery, I'm going to deform the battery, which is not good for LiPos. So what I need to do is find some really, really, really thin wire, and then I'm going to attach the pulse sensor to that. So that's what's going on there. We got a few more cool links for you today. Fabian Sciuto, who we had on the channel a while ago talking about his 8-core based Sudoku robot. Super cool. Check that out. Also in the description to this video. He has made a similar device based on the microbit. It's a little bit bigger. It's not quite as thin and elegant as this one. Like you can really slip this into a pocket. Of course, if you built this one, then you'd have to put some kind of an enclosure around, not least because of all these tiny little solder joints here that are going to grab on like Velcro to your clothing and maybe rip it up. But it's very cool. It uses the Adafruit OLED bonnet for Raspberry Pi. Oh, wait, no. It doesn't use, it's inspired by that, of course. And I haven't actually seen someone put... The Adafruit Clue is a similar board to the microbit that has a little screen on it. But I haven't seen anyone put a screen on the actual microbit before. So that's pretty cool. All these pins that you see here are connectors for a breakout where you slot the microbit in on the back. Ooh, and it gives it persistent data storage. Cool! Anyway, Fabian is doing some really cool stuff. You should check it out. Haha. Haha, look at that. Wow. Anyway, check out our other interview with him. So there's already a huge library of cool content for the Arduboy, including Circuit Dude. There's another one that's a port of Tamagotchi, which is like an Arduino Tamagotchi that was made by someone else. And then Keyboard Camper on the Arduboy forums created a port for it to Arduboy. Oh, yeah, here's the original Tamagotchi. This is another thing that I want to run, a little Tamagotchi device. Only have it check whether I've like hydrated and eaten and slept and stuff like that if I'm in a bad mood. Another cool thing with the Arduboy, our friend John Park over at Adafruit created this breakout cabinet for it, which I found when I was looking at ways to solder to the test points on the Arduboy. So in order to connect a joystick and some arcade buttons and things, it came out looking really cool, actually. He's got this attached to a cigar box. But in order to do that, he had to solder onto the back test points on the Arduboy. And it turns out that he did not solve the problem where you have to find ways to get the wires outside the case. So not only do you have to worry about if you use too thick of wire, it might deform the battery, which I'm afraid of doing. But also this case is designed to fit really, really well onto here. You know, maybe I can pull up the video I took and show you. Going to, yes, here we go. I'm going to share this other window with you. Stop screen. Here we go. So here is me taking it open yesterday. You can see I've lifted up the battery here. And you can see those test points as well as a bunch of credits to people who supported them on Kickstarter. So that's pretty cool. But you can also see that there is not a lot of room in here. It's a very tight fit. They made it sort of as slim as possible. And that means that you can't even really cut away the plastic part of it easily because the PCB is flush with the edge of the plastic. So even if you made like a little hole in the plastic, you'd still be sort of bending around the PCB, which is not optimal. And on top of that, you have the metal case, which is like obviously very flush with it. So it's a challenge trying to figure out how to break the wires out if you're going to solder anything to the back. And going back to John Edgar Park's post. Here we go. What he says is that he actually just added the top 2 screws of the Arduboy back on. He didn't even cut the case at all. He just only put the top 2 screws in, and then the bottom is able to flex away from it. So no cutting of the enclosure. Instead, he just made it so that it can sort of flap open a little bit. Prelude Delight says, do you have a favorite tiny motor you tend to pick for haptic feedback? Honestly, these are pretty generic. I've found that haptic feedback motors, they're typically like a little silver disc. I'll pull up one on Adafruit. Adafruit haptic feedback. Probably just haptic motor or cell phone motor or vibration motor, any of those. Here we go, vibrating mini motor disc. They typically look like this. You can get other ones that are for cell phones, and those look like a long cylinder with a part on the end that rotates. Those aren't as good for projects because they actually physically rotate outside of the object. So they could come in contact with other parts of your project or wiring or whatever. This thing is entirely self-contained. This thing, it's entirely self-contained. The only moving parts are inside of the metal enclosure. And they also, on the bottom side of this, you can see a little white paper tab sticking out. If you peel that off, there's a sticky part, so you can stick it onto stuff. And then the top part that you see here has a little foam padding. And so these are really nice and functional for any kind of projects. They're really cheap. They're really generic. You can get them pretty much anywhere. And that's the type that I would suggest for wearable projects or anything that you're trying to put inside of your project. Tom McGuane. Well, I haven't got a project written up for this one yet, is the reason I pulled up my own page on Hackster. So if you want to see when this actually has code published and stuff, go follow me on Hackster. You'll see when the new project is published. I already have some, like, as you saw, vaguely functional code for doing the timers on here. For the Pomodoro one, at least. And I'm happy to share that, but I don't think it's ready to be a project yet. This is not good code. It's just what works for now. And we will be, I'll be basically completely rewriting the sketch in order to have it do the multi-mode thing where you have the decimal timer, you have the Hypnagogic Thought creativity button timer, you have the Pomodoro timer all in one package. And that'll be really great. And at that point, I will publish it. So I think I got through all our cool stuff to show you today. Be sure to keep your eyes open for the Arduboy FX and the flash chip that you can upgrade your existing Arduboy with if you already have one. Check out some of these cool mind-altering gadgets. I've already published a bunch of these: the Hypnos pendant, the tiny screen decimal clock, the creativity button. It's all part of a sort of an ecosystem where technology cannot solve all of our problems, obviously, but there are some really cool things that you can do with your brain. If you have a little gadget with a screen and maybe a beeper or a vibration motor or whatever, and a little battery so that you can wear it around, it doesn't take that much. And these are really beginner friendly as well. You can make this easily on any type of Arduino, like anything Arduino programmable, or port it over to Python or JavaScript or whatever you're working with. We've got the micro gamer on Hackster linked below in the description, along with everything else. Our interview with the guy who made that, Fabian Sciuto. You can find a whole bunch of existing games and programs on the Arduboy forums if you have one. And check out John Edgar Park's project as well, with breaking out the Arduboy into a full-scale sort of arcade game. Oh, they have all this like do not track stuff on there. Cool. Yeah, check those out. And we'll see you after the weekend, I guess. Have a great one. Let's see if there's any more comments. A bunch of people saying hello. Hello, everyone. And yeah, have a great weekend and hack on.